Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is John Sunkel. I am the past president for Division 4. And thank you for taking time from your schedule to join us. This will be our last but not least webinar, The Truth About Passing the Buck for Credit Card Convenience Fees, along with a legislative update, new laws, and forecasting the upcoming election. These two informative subjects will be presented by Robert Gray and Connor Duckworth of HdL Companies. Mr. Duckworth has over 10 years experience working for both state and local municipalities and providing political consulting to candidates on many races and referendums. As a project manager, he is responsible for the development and implementation of business license, tax, and revenue-related products and services. He's a lecturer and mentor to municipalities nationwide and has served as vice president on multiple division boards along with state board for the California Municipal Revenue and Tax Association. In addition, Mr. Duckworth is a certified revenue officer. During his experience working at the city level, Mr. Duckworth was instrumental in winning the CMRTA Lighthouse Award of Excellence for creating use of the top business license and revenue programs in the state. And additionally, Mr. Duckworth is elected to a countywide office which governs over 400,000 residents. And in his spare time, Mr. Duckworth enjoys traveling the world. He has visited 51 countries and continues to plan his future adventures. Please, Mr. Duckworth, I believe, are you coming on first? Okay, let me introduce Robert Gray as well while I'm here. He's a director of tax and fee administrative solutions with HdL. Mr. Gray serves as director of tax and fee administration and has been with the firm since 1996. He has extensive experience in the design, development, implementation, and support of local tax software systems for local government. He has played a key role in the design of the municipal software systems and approximately 275 successful implementations of those systems. He introduced HdL's local tax services, which provides tax administration and consulting services to an ever-growing number of municipalities. While leading HdL's tax and fee administration team through a period of significant growth, he has ensured that the team maintains its commitment to providing excellent customer service. He also oversees software development and IT as HdL's CIO. He earned a Bachelor of Science degree in computer science and a master's degree in business administration from Azusa Pacific University. A quick reminder can be found on the CMRTA website, but you must be a member to access, so now's the time to join. If you need membership information, you can email us at cmrtadiv4@gmail.com or contact your local CMRTA representative. You don't want to miss out on upcoming webinars and meetings. So now I'd like to introduce Connor Duckworth, and he will proceed from here.
All right, thanks a lot, John. Appreciate the introduction. Before I hand it over to Robert, who's going to be doing the first part of our presentation on credit card convenience fees, I just want to let everybody know that you can utilize the chat feature in the webinar itself. There is a chat box feature. All you need to go is to scroll over your screen and press chat, and you can answer or you can ask any of the questions or answers throughout the presentation itself through there. We will be doing, this is a two-part type presentation, so we will be doing part of the presentation. The first part of the Q&A will be done afterwards, and those will be related to credit card convenience fees. The second part will be part of the legislative update, and we'll be doing that probably throughout the presentation, as there's a few bills that we'll be covering. So if you have any questions, or if you have any tips or things that you want to share to everyone, please utilize the chat feature. As John mentioned, a copy of the presentation can be available if you can email cmrtadiv4@gmail.com, and that was also entered in the chat box earlier. Before I hand it over to Robert to start, we did have a question that did come in. Let me go ahead and copy it over again, just in case anybody that did not see it yet. I will paste it in there. It's sort of like a poll question from John at the city of Fremont. They might be doing a listserv as well at the end, so we might want to respond to that. But just for that sake of the city, there's a couple of questions I just posted in there. So without further ado, I want to pass it over to Robert. Thank you.
Thank you, Connor and John. It's a pleasure to be here talking about convenience fees. I'm sure a very exciting topic for everyone. The goal, this is a very short presentation, but hopefully to clear up some common confusion related to the types of fees that can be charged. So we'll dive into those a little bit before we get into the government-specific programs related to convenience fees, which are directly applicable to you. So first off, as far as terminology goes, these are four of the most common terms that you'll see bandied about: the processing fee, surcharge fee, convenience fee, and service fee. Sometimes they're used interchangeably. When you're looking at, legislation or court cases and other things, these terms are oftentimes used in place of one another. So the first step is really to get some clarification about what we mean by these different terms. Go ahead and move on to so processing fee is pretty straightforward. It's what everyone's most commonly aware of. It's the fee paid by the merchant, in this case the government entity, local government agency, to the card issuer and the card network for the processing of the payment. So it's typically a fixed cost per transaction plus a certain percentage of the transaction amount, which can vary depending on the card type used, as well as the arrangement that you have with your payment service provider. But the different card types can result in charges between 1.5% to about 3.5% of the transaction cost. So that's not what we're going to be talking about today, but I thought it was important to start off with that to clarify what we mean. The surcharge fee is an additional fee that's added by the merchant for the privilege of using a credit card as a means of payment. So for the card networks like Visa and MasterCard, this is essentially viewed as a penalty to the customer for choosing to pay by the credit card. So the card networks have always been very strongly against the use of surcharge fees and have tried to block that where possible for obvious reasons. The convenience fee is become somewhat the catch-all term, which is utilized oftentimes to cover surcharge fees as well as the service fee, which is the main one that we'll get to. The convenience fee traditionally is added by the merchant for a specific use, such as either taxes if allowed, or a specific alternative payment channel. So there's all kinds of rules related to how convenience fees can be applied by the card networks. And depending on how you're applying those rules dictates what you can do with a convenience fee. The easiest example of a convenience fee in my mind is just kind of the classic setup of buying a movie ticket. Traditionally, the movie theaters, you paid in person at the counter. And when they introduced online payments as a convenience model, then you would pay extra for the privilege of using that alternative payment channel. And so that would be a situation where a convenience fee could be charged. It was not necessarily a fee just for use of a credit card. It also had other restrictions that came along with it. And then finally, we have the service fee program. Service fees are really the types of fees that you'll want to utilize as a government entity. Visa evidently recognized the confusion with this terminology, and so they introduced this new term, service fees, in their book of rules for their payment network. And it covers a special type of convenience fee, which is only applicable to certain permitted merchant category codes, or MCCs. MasterCard, somewhat confusingly, just calls their program the Government Convenience Fee Program, hence the complication of use of these terms. But going forwards in the presentation, I'll largely be using service fee to reflect discussion about this special government program for convenience fees, just to avoid confusion with the traditional convenience fees, which government entities can also make use of, but they have further restrictions that really make it not as good of an option for you as the service fee. So let's go ahead and move on, and we'll take a look at legal matters. Quick clarification. When you're implementing a convenience fee program of any type, there's two primary matters that you have to be considered. One is, can I legally charge the fee? The second issue is, if I can legally charge the fee, is that fee and the way I intend to use it allowed by the card networks for the different card types that I plan to accept? Each card network has their own rules, has their own requirements, and so it can get confusing, and there can be conflicting rules where it could be legal but not allowed by the card network, or potentially vice versa. So the service fee program has largely cleared that up, but this was the state that things were in, the past maybe 10, 15 years or so. So violating card network rules can be serious. It can result in some significant fines or restricting your card access to the card network, basically preventing you from being able to process, Visa cards or MasterCards. So it is important that the way you apply the fees abides by the guidelines in their network rules, as well as the legal issues. So with that being said, where do we stand in California today related to these types of charges? I won't go into the history to depth. Surcharges are what are specifically addressed in California Civil Code 1748.1, which appears to prohibit credit card surcharges specifically for retailers, so it doesn't directly apply to government entities. That rule is still on the books, but due to the Italian Colors court case, it was declared unconstitutional as an abridgment of free speech and commercial speech, and thus is not able to be enforced. That was ruled and survived on appeal, and so currently that statute cannot be enforced. So surcharges are kind of once again allowed in California and most other states due to similar court cases. And as a result of this, the card networks, who had previously mostly banned surcharges in all instances, have responded to the court action and have adjusted their rules. So surcharges are possible and an option for you. But due to the restrictions that are applied to surcharge use by the card networks, they're really not a great option for government use. The final type is kind of convenience and service fees, being this new model we're going to talk about. And those are okay as well. Those are legal as long as you implement them according to the restrictions applied by the card networks. So, the MasterCard rule book, the Visa's, I think, is about 800 pages last I checked. So these are long rule books that dive into these things in detail. Your payment service provider is who you'll want to lean on fairly strongly. They're there to make sure that, because it reflects on them and their access to the card networks as well, the activities that you take. So they're going to make sure that your fees that you're imposing abide by these rules. But it's definitely important that we get them correct. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next slide. This is specifically classic convenience fees. So I call it Visa convenience fee rules for clarification. And this is just some of the restrictions. So if you were just applying a vanilla type convenience fee, it must be charged for a bona fide convenience in the form of an alternative payment channel outside of your standard customary payment channel. So for example, at the counter, transactions might be your standard payment channel. Therefore, you could charge a convenience fee for an online portal as an alternative payment channel of convenience. It also is restricted to only allowing one-time usage, so card not present transactions. You can't have a card on file that's utilized for like a monthly bill. That is not allowed under traditional convenience fee rules. It also is restricted to fixed amount only. You can't charge a percent. And it must be applied equally across all of the accepted payment methods in that channel. So everything that's online, whether it's credit card, e-check, other methods, would need to have the same exact fee applied to it. So these are just some of the primary restrictions or rules that would apply to the traditional convenience fee program that make it really not great for government use. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next slide, which talks about the permitted merchant category codes for the Visa service fee program, or as I mentioned earlier, what MasterCard calls the government convenience fee program. So this is, real quick, the MCC is a 4-digit number that's used to categorize the type of transactions utilized by a merchant. So in order to qualify for these programs, you have to fall under one of these designated MCCs. There's, I think, 12 to 16 of them or so that are allowed. And they cover things such as, government postal services, service stations, government, public educational entities, and the like. The ones that we care about are really those last two that are listed there: 9311 tax payments and 9399 more generically government services not elsewhere classified. So that's what allows you to take advantage of this service fee program. So on the next slide, we'll cover the reason why this program is the program for you. It provides increased flexibility and significantly reduced restrictions on how you can apply the fee. So it supports either a fixed fee or a percent of the transaction. There are no caps or limits to what amounts you can charge. You can charge a different fee for different payment types or different methods or both. So you can charge a 50-cent fee for e-check transactions because they're a lower cost to you, while charging a 2.9% convenience fee for the credit card payments. And same for different types of payment methods. So whether it's online or in person, you can apply those things at your discretion. So you have a lot greater flexibility. The fee must be the same for the same payment type of the same method. So you can't charge one convenience or one service fee amount for a Visa card and a different service fee amount for a MasterCard or American Express. So they, of course, don't want their card type being penalized over others. So that has to be applied consistently. But other than that, you have a lot of flexibility with how you can apply those fees. The last item is important as well, which is that the customer must be notified in advance of the fee, and the fee must be described properly as a merchant fee. So the card networks do not want the fee to be labeled as a fee being assessed or presumed to have been assessed by the card network, or as being a penalty for using the card type as a transaction, as a convenience. So it just has to be labeled in Visa's language. It says as a service fee or common language. Obviously, there's globalization issues. So what it's called in different regions, not just throughout the US, but across the world, they have to be concerned about that as well. So the key is it just has to be labeled before the transaction is concluded. They have to have the ability to cancel out of the transaction if they don't want to pay that fee. And it also has to be clearly labeled as a fee being assessed by the merchant, in this case you, the government entity, or your third-party agent, if appropriate, if that fee is being assessed by, your payment processor, for example. So just having that labeled on the checkout is something that would be sufficient for that. So that really concludes the walkthrough of the different types of charges that fall under this umbrella term of convenience fees. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, definitely, lean on your payment service provider for assistance in this. They're your best source, and it is their job to be up to speed on these things. There is ongoing court activity, and so these things could change. And as they do, it'll be your payment service provider who should be in the best position to help make sure that you are, staying in accordance with both the legal requirements as well as the card network requirements. The card networks release updated rules on a regular basis that adjust the requirements of these programs as well. So they'll make sure that your programs stay accurately appropriate to that. So that is the information I have at this point. Connor, we can open it up to if there are any questions that came in.
Sounds good. So if anybody has a question, remember to please utilize the chat feature. You can type directly in the chat box and it will come over to us. We don't have any questions at the moment, but I'm going to give a couple minutes just in case anybody does have a question that you would like to ask Robert. We have about 2-3 minutes for questions. So if you do have one, please enter it in the chat box feature. and then we'll go ahead and start our legislative update. Oh, we have one question. Can you go back to the MCC page? Sure. And just a heads up, we will offer this slide to everyone, or this presentation to everyone. All you need to do is provide your email, or send an email, I'm sorry, to CMRTA-div, the number 4 at gmail.com. That was put in the chat box a little earlier, and we will send over the presentation to you. We do have a question here, Robert. Let's see. Oh, just wanted to, this is from Rosa. She just wanted to thank everybody for attending the webinar series. And we might be able to go ahead and have some more questions. We did get some feedback already regarding some future topics. So if you do have a topic for us, please send that email over to that same address, and we can look at doing one again for the 4th quarter or even for the 1st quarter of next year. All right, we have some questions coming in. I've always heard that you can't charge a credit card fee for a utility payment. Is that true?
So the quick answer to that is that it depends on which program you're using. So the convenience fee, I believe, can be applied if you're using just a convenience fee program. However, generally for utility payments, there is a special utility payment program which was created by Visa and the card networks. And if you are participating in that program, then that prevents you from charging any other types of fees on that in exchange for the reduced rates that the card networks allow you for participating in that program. So that's why typically you would not apply any fees to those utility payments, because they're generally registered and participating in that special utility billing payment program that's with the card networks themselves as a separate program from the service fee or the government convenience fee program.
Another question coming through. Has there been any experience with online usage dropping when charging a transaction?
So clarify that for me, Connor. So with online usage dropping when a convenience fee is applied, is that the?
I'm not sure. Just what the question came in. There wasn't too much.
Okay, I'm thinking that may be what the question is related to. Just, is you want people to file online because that's of course more convenient for you in processing those payments versus coming to counter or sending you mail. And so, if you apply a convenience fee, does that hurt the adoption of that payment channel versus, because what you want to do is incentivize them to pay you in the most convenient manner possible. So that is a common concern. We could do a survey, I think, as a follow-up, because I think that would be the best information, would be a poll from our attendees here as to what they've observed based on whether they're using convenience fees or not for various programs. I know in my experience with our clients at HDL that the convenience fee program has really not seemed to significantly impact adoption of payments, whether they're online or not. So the folks that come into City Hall and traditionally would pay at the counter with cash, typically are going to do that regardless, and those that are paying online through the model will just pay based on whatever is set up, so whether that's a convenience fee or not. So traditionally, I'd say 10 years ago, the majority of our clients were using what's called an agency funded model, where the city was actually paying the processing fee and not passing that on to the customer. However, the last 5 years or so, the majority of our clients have been switching or implementing convenience fee programs. And maybe that was because of that court case in 2015 helped clarify for some folks that was allowed. It could be economic circumstances. I'm not sure what drove it, but a significant number of our clients that we're onboarding the last several years, most of them are implementing a convenience fee for the online piece. And then what they'll typically do is offer each check at a lower rate, because depending on your payment service provider, you can get, much more advantageous and oftentimes fixed transaction rates for e-check versus percent-based for credit card. So they would kind of give that as that option as a low cost. If the convenience fee on the credit card is too much, then you have the option to pay by e-check for free or for like a 25-cent, a very low transaction rate. So that's some ways that some agencies, I think, have navigated that. But I haven't heard any reports from agencies that upon implementing a convenience fee, that the online transaction percentage went down as a result of the implementation of the fee.
We do have time for one more question. I know we have about 4 or 5 that have come through as of late. If you do have a question we don't get to you, you can always utilize the email address that Robert has provided on the screen. But one last question for Robert. Looks like, can the government have a convenience fee or service charge? Can that be a pass-through fee straight from a credit card company with 100% recovery by council action?
So read that for me one more time.
Can the government convenience fee or service charge be a pass-through fee straight from the credit card companies with a 100% recovery by city council action?
Yes. So the answer to that is yes. And the way the fee is charged, and this is slightly different depending on the card network. So I'll have to look at my notes. So I may be slightly getting this reversed, but depending on whether it's Visa or MasterCard, one of them recommends that any service fee be levied as a separate transaction when possible. So for example, if the transaction amount is $100 and there's a $3 convenience fee or service fee applied to it, they recommend for clarity that the $100 fee go through as one transaction on the card, and then the $3 be applied as a secondary separate transaction. And oftentimes that may be the case when the fee is a pass-through directly to the payment service provider. So if you're using a third party to process that transaction so that the city doesn't ever see the charge, you're not receiving the money and then having to pay the processing fees at the end of the month. Instead, it's a direct pass-through to the payment provider. That is definitely supported. And how you set that up is dependent. So one of the card networks recommends that they're actually posted as separate transactions on the card for clarity, but it's not required. So you may have different payment service providers that kind of enforce that based on that recommendation, or they pass it through still as one single transaction, and then they pull out the convenience fee piece and retain that themselves, and then they remit to you and your merchant account the core part of the transaction. The second part of that question, just about council action, yeah, that's just, the convenience fee would be applied as a fee, much like any other fee schedule item. So it would just need to go through that standard approval process in order to authorize the convenience fee by council, and then you're good to go.
Perfect. Well, thanks a lot, Robert. Appreciate your time and presentation. And everybody else, like I did mention before, there are a couple of questions that we weren't able to get to today. We do have to do our second part of the presentation, but you can feel free to email Robert and he'll get back to you with a response as well.
Thank you.
All right. So on to our legislative update portion. We have quite a few bills. Not a lot as normal, or not as many as normal, just due to the COVID type situation that we had this year. Most of the bills that were related to legislation were for COVID relief type funds. But we'll go into that along with some of the propositions that'll be affecting some local municipalities this year. Before I forget, we do have a LinkedIn page for CMRTA Division 4. If you are a part of LinkedIn, please put in the search bar CMRTA Division 4 and add us. We'll be able to give you more information of various events and things throughout the year. So as you can see, Rosa has posted something down there. She does post a lot. She's one of our admins. So if you are looking for more information or post some sort of listserv, we do allow that as well too on the LinkedIn page for everybody's review and to chime in for networking. All right, so what 3 actions can be done to a bill once it passes both state houses? That's a question. Usually I have candy and I'm able to give it out to everyone, but that's a question to pose for you. I will go over it real shortly. So if you know it, great. If you don't, you're going to learn something new today. We got another question for you. When is the last day for the governor to sign or veto bills in this session? Coming up very soon. All right. So the last day is tomorrow, September 30th, for the governor to sign or veto a bill. So back to that first question, what are the 3 things that can happen? Well, we just covered them. One is the governor can sign. So that means it's a big presentation. Usually the press is there. Well, in non-COVID times when it's a big ceremonial thing. So there's a big issue to sign the bill, veto the bill. So that's not going to be very common anymore. It hasn't been common that much, especially with Governor Newsom. California, as you know, is a one-party state. So being a one-party state, most of the bills have been vetted already through the state legislature before they get to the governor. And Governor Newsom has expressed already that he is going to be pretty much in line with the state legislature. So any bill that passes them, there's a very, very high probability that he will sign. Unlike Governor Brown, who was before Governor Newsom, who was tight on the budget and often would veto a budgetary bill that would cost the state more funds. If you see, for instance, our federal government has a dual type legislative system. We have the Democratic-controlled Congress, Republican-controlled Senate, and the Republican-controlled executive branch. So anything that comes through there is going to have a lot more difficulty to actually get signed. It has to pass both parties, and some sort of agreement has to be reached in order for that to happen. In California, it's a little easier for something to get through. If it passes the legislative branch, it'll most likely get signed by the governor. The third process is a bill can get chaptered. Chaptered means that it's not signed and it's not vetoed. It's just in the law. So if it's September 30th or October 1st, let's say, and no action has been taken, the bill gets chaptered. So it's going to go into law by default. So sign, veto, and chapter. Most bills do take effect January 1st, and the last day for anything to have been passed was August 31st. So this is a slide I actually just copied and pasted it from a past presentation because we've gone over it many, many times if you've been in one of these sessions before. But now this bill is actually coming to law and coming to effect starting January 1st of next year. It's AB 1607, and it is a business license gender discrimination notice. So once again, if you want to use the chat functionality, I know a couple of you reached out to me beforehand. I had some questions on this. I can probably go through some of this if you chime in at the earlier part. If not, hold your questions to the end. We can go through if we have time at the end as well. So this is regarding municipality providing a business with written notice summarizing the provisions of the Gender Tax Repeal Act of 1995 at the time the BL is issued. So what does that mean? That means that at the time of the license issuance, the state is requiring that if somebody requests for it, they can be given one of many languages. So like we had for AB 3002, the CASB bill, the secondary bill part of that, I think it passed about 2 years ago. That can also be done in multiple languages. It's English, Spanish, Vietnamese, Mandarin, Tagalog. There might be one more in there, but that information can be found on the Department of Consumer Affairs page. The language is on there. I did check the other day. What this bill is it means that it should not have any discrimination based on price or gender. So as an example, let's say that we go to a dry cleaners. I used this example in the past. So I happen to have a button-down white shirt that I take to my local dry cleaner, and the dry cleaner charges me $2.50 for the dry clean. Rosa in San Diego happens to have a very similar button-down white blouse, almost identical, and she goes to her dry cleaner, and her dry cleaner, if it was the same one as me, would charge $2.50. However, because Rosa is a woman, the dry cleaner happens to charge $3. Well, now in California, that is against the law, and you have to charge the exact same price if it's a very similar shirt in size and in texture. Now, if Rosa's shirt happens to have sequins or glitter or embroidery or anything special to it, that might assess a higher fee. But if it's a plain white shirt, just like me, she has her shirt, I have my shirt, and it's the same price regardless, in either dry cleaner for a man, then it has to be the same price for a woman. Also the same, if you were to go to a barber, let's say that you go to a Supercuts or Fantastic Sam, somewhere like that, and I'm going in and I'm asking for a buzz cut. The buzz cut is going to cost me $20. If Rosa goes in and wants to ask for a similar buzz cut, and they want to charge her $35 at the same location, that is now also against the law. It has to be the same price for the same hairstyle. Now, Rosa has a much more fancy hairstyle than I am, and I have short hair, she has longer hair. So based on the hair length and the style, that's going to be a little different fee. But if you're asking for the same type cut or the same type ability, same with Taylor, it has to be the same price. So this bill was passed way back or it was chaptered back in September of 2019, but it's just going to go into effect now, January 1 of this year. Monique does have a question. It's come in. States we can increase the business license fee. However, for most of us, it's a tax, and we cannot increase the tax without a voter approval. Could they mean apply a fee pass-through on top of the tax? Very good question, Monique. Yes. So a fee can be applied. Those of you that do have a business license fee for renewal or for an application, that fee can be increased for this. The state is not going to give you any reimbursement, but you can get the taxpayer to reimburse you for it. Now, of course, we can't charge, $5 per license for this. I mean, $1 or whatever it's going to cost to print it out is probably a more fair assessment. But you can charge a fee for this, and that can be done through the taxpayer as well. The city would collect 100% and would keep 100% of the fee, unlike the CASP fee. But yes, if it is going to be assessed to the tax, it does have to go back to the voters. So a fee can be charged. A fee is passed by council typically. The tax is passed by the voters. So I would not recommend assessing a tax to it. It would be much more costly than the fee that's going to be assessed. Another question from Deanna. Can we provide a link to the city's webpage with multiple languages, or do we have to physically mail something out to the business license customer? That's a great question. So a lot of our clients have already been asking about this, and we are in the process of determining the most fair way to do it and best way to do it. So we're still in discussion of this, and we'll be reaching out to everybody that is involved with us directly. But I would want to say reach out to your software provider. That way you can do whatever is best for your city. So a couple of ideas that have been breached is to have it on the license certificate. So we know that real estate is very limited on your renewals and on your application. The bill does say that it should be given at the time the BL is issued. So the BL is issued, that would mean a certificate is given to the customer. So we feel that it should be added to the certificate itself in small print on where the provider can go and obtain the information via the web on the state's page. Another way, you can put it on your website as well. I've seen it put, for instance, AB 3002. Some of our clients have put it on the instructional page on their website or on the receipt page if there is limited space on that first instruction page, wherever you would like. I mean, I would say as long as you have it, then you're pretty much safe. The state isn't really going to be going and, you know, knocking on your door, asking you for an audit or asking you for anything. As long as you have it available to the customer, same with the front counter. As long as you have it available to the front counter customer, you should be able to be okay. I don't think the State Department of Consumer Affairs hasn't really mentioned anything about this. And like the Stormwater Board for 205, they're not going to be enforcing it that heavily to the cities. But you should be able to provide it if somebody asks for it. All right. If you have questions on this, please email it throughout the presentation. We can answer it at the end. The next one is AB 2362, and it's been sent to the governor. I haven't checked the status today, but as of yesterday, it's still pending. It's existing law, meaning that the firearms dealer has to have a business license, a valid seller's permit, and a DOJ certificate. Those of you that do have firearms, whether it's a pawn shop or a firearm dealership, has to have those 3 items. This bill would add another layer to it, saying if passed, starting July 1st of 2022, so we have some time, the DOJ can impose a fine of $1,000 for the first violation and $3,000 for additional violations if not meeting the requirements. That'll be enforced by the DOJ, so you don't have to worry anything about it. However, it's just more in-depth fines if the firearms dealers are not doing what they're supposed to be. The next one is a very important one, SB 793 on tobacco sales. So most of you have a tobacco shop, at least one, if not more, in your city or county. And this would prohibit a tobacco retailer from selling flavored tobacco or a tobacco flavor enhancer. A violation of this prohibition is also an infraction punishable by a fine of $250 for each of the violations. It also includes pods for vape pens, tank-based systems, menthol cigarettes, and chewing tobacco. So it's a wide variety of them. It's not just vape directly. It initially did cover cigars and hookah, but they lobbied pretty hard on that, and they were later exempted. So it's only those few systems or those few type tobacco items that are going to be for it. It allows local municipalities to also create more stringent enforcement measures. Now, what does that mean? That means that a lot of people have already been doing it, which is great on your part. And we've seen more and more that are in development for a city or county to have a tobacco permit. Now, a tobacco permit, for the most part, I've seen it is run out of the Code Enforcement Division or Planning Division. And it's just another enhancement for an inspector to go out and make sure that the business itself is only selling non-flavored items as this law pertains to. It also would be more stringent. Maybe you have different fines, or you say you can inspect it more frequently. The state allows you to have whatever you want. They just gave you some parameters. So if you do want to have a more strict type code or permit system, you can do it. Like I said, we've seen it. People have been doing it at least for the beginning of the last couple years, but more popular this year. If you have a question or people that have done it, I would suggest going on the CMRTA listserv to pose that question of who has a tobacco permit already if you're looking to move forward with that. Another one, we see this pretty much every year. Whether it gets signed or not, we don't know. We have one more day to do it. AB 1525, a cannabis and banking/accounting bill. So this authorizes the Cannabis Bureau to share the application, licensee, and regulatory information, including the track and trace measures, with financial institutions upon request of the cannabis business. It specifies that a person providing the accounting services does not commit a crime under California law solely for providing professional accounting services to a licensed cannabis business. That means that if somebody asks for the cannabis business to provide information, to do background checks, things of that nature, they can do it. A lot of times banks might be asking for it, especially these credit unions. that are private credit unions that are not publicly based, because you can't be FDIC insured if you're doing cannabis at the current time. So if they do ask for your background information, they can ask for it now with this law. We'll see if the governor signs it or not. It's a very, very minute change to it. We're still waiting for that general bill to actually allow cannabis banking throughout the state for pretty much any banking agency, but it still is a federal violation, even though more and more states keep allowing it as elections pass. I'm not sure how many states are actually going to be doing it this time around, but I do know pretty much every major election we have more and more cannabis states that are allowing for the retail use. All right. This one, some of you are familiar with. It's the UT collection of prepaid phones, SB 1441. Essentially, there is a sunset bill for prepaid phones. This is going to make this bill elongate and change the sunset. It's going to extend it until January 1st of 2026. So everything that's currently being on there, for the most part, is going to stay the same. It's just allowing the bill to be sunsetted or to be extended on that sunset until 2026. All right, so we all know about AB 5, very prominent bill. I was just looking up another article today on it, and AB 5 actually affected about 10% of the workforce. So that is a huge amount. I mean, that's about 2 million of the workforce that it's been affected. And the bill had a lot of flaws in it. This bill by the same author, Gonzalez, 2257 is the bill. It does outline a bunch of new exemptions. A lot of them were lobbied. I know directly because I was involved in a couple of the lobbying efforts on the youth sports side of things. So the bill only exempted a few. Now it's more. It also does a small job or concentrated on a single use job. So before, if it was a one-time thing, a lot of times it would not have been allowed, but now it can be for a one-time operation, which is a good thing. Exemptions that have carved out. I'm not going to go through all of them, but as you see, consulting, youth sports coaching, referees, caddying, wedding planning, interpreting services, content contributors, advisors, producers, cartographers, specialized performers, appraisers, foresters, home inspectors, journalists, recording artists, a lot in the music industry, photographers, independent radio promoters, certain publicists, pet sitters, tutors, and many, many more. If you are looking for it, I do recommend that you go to the state page. I'll have a link at the end of this presentation to it. You can always Google it as well. It's AB 2257, and you can see all the carved out people for it. The law is already taken into effect, so you don't need to worry about it. And so those that are still acting on it will still be 1099 contractors for that, which is a great segue. You noticed on there, it does not take the app-based drivers or delivery services. So that will lead me into the next one, our November general election. So since we are on AB 5, I'm going to jump down to Prop 22. You've seen many, many commercials on this, whether it's via the TV or radio. It's the app-based driver repeal. So Uber, Lyft, Grubhub, and more of those types of businesses have put in, gosh, I think it's over $100 million right now for it. It started off at 60, and now with everything, it just keeps continuing. That bill would allow an exemption for Uber, Lyft, Grubhub, et cetera, from most AB 5 requirements. So that would make them independent contractors. Currently, they are now classified as an employer. The bill did go to the California courts, and it actually was put on hold as an emergency hold for the courts to wait until the election happened. So much going on with this bill. And I mean, I'll give you the pros and the cons. The pros, so a yes vote on this will repeal AB 5 for this specific grouping, and the commercials say 4 out of 5 of the independent contractors do want to stay that way. You might see higher costs or the removal of Uber, Lyft, and Grubhub from California. They did threaten that prior to the courts putting a stop and a hold on that court order. So they may actually leave California completely. So we'll have to go back to taxi-based only systems for that. They have threatened before if the bill does not pass, or you're going to see substantial costs and an increase if you use Uber, Lyft, etc. On the no vote, it's to keep it the way that it is, and that is also going to keep them as an employer, meaning that they will have employee rights. The companies will pay their payroll taxes. They'll be covered under workers' comp. A lot of their insurance will, it's still up in the air because you have to have driver insurance, but that's also going to be determined probably by the courts as well. So it's going to give the employers more ruling on what hours the employee can work. So instead of being working whenever you want, wherever you want, if you want to work around the airport, if you want to work around your local city, now the employer will be able to dictate your hours and where you're going to work. So look into that. It's huge on this election right now. So more information is everywhere online. I'll go back up to the top, Prop 15. So Prop 15 is a tax on commercial and industrial properties. It requires commercial and industrial properties to be taxed based on market value and dedicates the revenue to education services. So currently we have Prop 13. Prop 13 is one of actually California's in the top, I believe, 5 in the nation on property tax for least amount of property tax. Normally we're at the bottom for the highest, or at the top, I guess, if you want to say, for the most costly taxes. However, for property tax, we're one of the better states around for property tax. This is going to be sort of like a split roll where it's only going to affect commercial and industrial properties, meaning that if you do have a commercial property or you do have industrial property, each year or every couple years based on the county, it's going to reassess the value of that. So you're going to pay the market value on your property. It's not going to affect residential. However, proponents of this, I have heard, are looking at targeting residential if this measure does pass. So be on the lookout. Your home values or your home property tax may be targeted if this passes in the future, but I do not know if this will continue or not. But yeah, this is a very important one. Check on that. Proponents say if you do have it, commercial property, it is going to increase the property value or the property tax. Therefore, small businesses or even large businesses might be affected. You might be able to have your local taxes be affected on there as well. So for property tax, your grocery store might be able to go on there. That might increase your grocery prices or your restaurant prices as well. Prop 21, I don't have too much time, so if you do have a question, please chime in the chat box. Local rent control. This will expand the government's power to use rent control on housing that were occupied about 15 years ago. So under the Contra Costa Act or the Costa Hawkins Act, I'm sorry, landlords can increase rent prices to market rates when a tenant moves out. This ballot measure will require local government that adopts it to allow landlords to increase the rental rates no more than 15% during the first year of the vacancy. So normally you can increase it higher than 15%. Now it's going to cap it at that 15. It also exempts those that own 2 homes or less. So if you own a home and you have a secondary home that you use as a rental property, that'll be exempted. But if you have a third one, then that's going to take effect for rent control. All right, let's move one more on here. I see a couple questions. Those of you that did want to have questions on looking for more information, this ledge info is a great tool to use. It is the direct history of the bill, and you can find it on the state's page. It's a state-operated website. Great information is on there. Let me do a couple questions that have come through. Oh, more. All right, so a question regarding AB 2257, that's that SB5 bill. We were advised by our city attorney's office, as long as the independent contractor receives the 1099 at the end of the year, they would still be required for a business tax / license. That is correct. If they are a 1099 contractor and they are filing as that, then they would need a business license. Another part of that question is, does the bill mean they need to change their employee status to a W-2 if they fall under it? As a city employee, I would not recommend any tax advice to the client. I would in turn ask them to consult their tax person or tax attorney if they have one for a corporation for that. So yes, but if they are a 1099 contractor, they should be obtaining a business license if that's in your code. Once again, if you want to use the chat box function, we do have a couple of more minutes to do questions. I do see, I'm going to put an email on there if you want to get a copy of the presentation. All you need to do is email that website. Perfect. So any other questions? All right. If you don't, like I mentioned before, I do advise you to go to the state website on that ledge page to check it out. Go ahead and email CMRTA-HdL4@gmail.com for more information. Once again, thank you to all the attendees. We had over 100 attendees that came into this session today, and we throughout our presentation series for CMRTA Division 4. We'll keep you posted if we have any more in the future. I'm sure we will. This presentation will also be on the state CMRTA website, hopefully by the end of today, if not by tomorrow. If you have missed one in the past, you can always go back and check one of those out. The CRO codes are posted as well. If you do need those, you can email us, cmrtadiv4@gmail.com for the CRO codes. And thanks again for everybody that's been coming out for these last couple webinar series, and hope to see you guys soon. If not via webinar, then in person, which would be even better. Have a good rest of your week, and we'll keep you guys posted. Thanks a lot. Have a great rest of the time.